Welcome to another edition of the Real Energy Podcast. Today we have the honor of being with an attorney in the Commonwealth. I didn't say state, Keith.
Thank you.
Commonwealth of Virginia. We're welcoming today Whitney Bolton.
Hey, Whit.
Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
All right. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of family issues. You're an attorney. Dealing with divorce, family issues, custody issues. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and our people? Tell us a little bit about what you do, how long you've been doing it, and everything.
Oh, cool. I can do that. My name's Whitney Bolton. I am a family law attorney in Virginia, and I've been practicing for about 13 years. I used to do criminal and family law, but I've always done family law. And about 5 years ago, I quit having a dual practice and just focused exclusively on family law. And I practice primarily out of Prince William County in Manassas at a place called Farrell and Croft. Little plug there. Mm-hmm. And but I do go all over the Northern Virginia area. I'll go down to Stafford. I'll go to Loudoun. I'll go to Alexandria. You got to pay me a lot to go to Arlington because parking.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
How about 95 traffic?
And there's that. So I don't mind going there.
But they're going to make sure they pay you, right? That's right.
You got it.
That's right.
There's an extra inconvenience fee.
Exactly. So today we're going to talk about, a lot of things dealing with marriages, divorce, everything. So, me, I Google a lot of stuff. And by the way,
not you, Pat.
This is for entertainment purposes. This is not legal advice by Whitney. So she's not representing anybody. She's just here just to express her views. Okay? So we got that in. So I was looking at some stuff and writing down some stuff. 2021, there were 689,000 divorces versus 1.9 million marriages. So 35% of marriages end in divorce. I thought that number would be higher.
After 2020, everybody was talking about how the pandemic was going to make sure a whole lot more divorces are coming out there. That number.
Well, the new marriages have some time before they end.
So you be interested to hear this. 2019, the divorce rate was 2.7 2.7 out of every 1,000 marriages end in divorce in 2019. Mm-hmm. In 2020, did that go up or down?
Up. I say up.
Down.
Who says up?
I was going to say up, but
I say down.
That look on your face says something to
2.5. Wow. It actually went down.
Wow.
Really?
Why did it go down?
So looking at, there's a ton of stats that I have. Okay. So from 2010 to 2016, adjusted marriage rate for women. 32.7 out of every 1,000 women got married. It hit a low in 2013 of 31 out of every 1,000. Okay. And in 2019, it hit a really, really low of 28.5 out of every 1,000.
So basically what you're saying is that women were smarter in 2019 than they are now.
There we go.
So won't you express your feelings there, Stephanie?
What's going on, Stephanie?
Tell us how you really feel.
So Whitney, your main practice? You deal with a lot of divorces,
right? Family law, it encompasses everything from divorce to protective orders, domestic violence, child custody modification, child support modification, everything within that gamut we handle.
So who do you think, in your opinion, your professional opinion, files for divorce more?
Statistically, I would say it's most likely the woman.
Why do you think that is?
That's an excellent question, and there are a lot of theories out there. One theory that I've heard is that, sometimes there's inequality in the marriage, and the woman is being more of the caretaker, more of the home taker, taking care of the home, while still managing a full-time job, and they just feel level of burnout. Right. And they get frustrated, and so they end up walking away from the marriage. That's one theory out there.
So Keith and we talked about this a while back, and we had a thought of the breakdown in family, right? Yeah. When we talked about the Industrial Revolution,
right.
And how just the laws and everything that happened changed women from being home takers and went into the working and started working. Who in here, who's a female, thinks that you working has anything to do with the marriage rate or the divorce rate going up?
I can't even speak on that because I've been working since I was 12 years old. So for the concept of me to live in a home where there is somebody else that is completely financially supporting that home and I don't have to go to work, I can't even conceive of that train of thought because I have never been in that situation ever in my life.
Right.
Thinking about when, our parents or our parents' parents, they grew up in a different environment, right? Where is it the choice? Is it the abundance of choice that that's available right now that makes people think I don't have to deal with this bullshit?
Choice, I think, is definitely there.
Go
ahead.
I think choice for sure, but also like freedom, right? Like we talked about this on a different podcast. Like you don't have to get married as a woman now just to have your necessities,
certain securities,
right? So I don't think people were that much happier, and that's why the marriage rate was lower. I think I mentioned this too in that one about relationships. Like I think it was lower because you had nowhere to go as a woman with your 2 kids, so you didn't file for divorce. I just think you were like miserable in your relationship.
And I'm wondering if the people were happier back then, or they just kind of settled.
I think
settled.
Thank you.
Settled, and then also religion I think played a larger part. So you make the commitment and you follow through on the commitment.
I mean,
at all cost.
Religion, society,
all of it,
finances.
So I'm going to ask Whitney a question. That is a very, very good question.
And that's not pointing out just Christianity. I'm just saying all organized religions where it's like that's the point. You stay together.
Subservient.
And plus, also back then, there's a lot of domestic violence, right? In the 50s, when there were more domestic violence. Then?
Well, that's what I think.
Who reported it? Though,
exactly. Yeah. That a lot. That was just settling. I'm gonna keep quiet and be over here.
Well, and the police wouldn't do anything about it
True.
in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and
80s,
in the 70s.
even into the 80s.
Where is it that we
police
saw the
really
law
weren't
that you
doing
can beat
anything.
your wife on Sunday?
Fredericksburg.
Yeah.
Warren, Fauquier County.
Yeah.
But Fauquier County, really quick, a former friend of mine had gotten into a domestic situation with her husband, and it became physical. There were charges brought against him, and I promise you, his lawyer actually stated the law that because it was on a Sunday, the only thing that was missing was that he did not beat her on the courthouse steps, and they literally fined him $50. It was a $50 fine for
precedent.
Yeah.
Can we get personal, Whitney?
Sure.
I don't see a ring.
No, you're right. I'm not married. I do have a long-term boyfriend. We've been together. It'll be 3 years in July.
Different suite.
Were you a family attorney before your divorce?
Yes, actually, I was.
Okay. So did anything that you learned in your practice, how did that transfer into your personal life?
Well, there's that saying that, if you're an attorney and you represent, you've got a fool for a client. Represent yourself, you got a fool for a client. So I didn't do that because, when you're going through a divorce, there's, it's highly charged with emotion and your perspective isn't clear and you don't have a whole lot of objectivity. So I'm like, I'm not going to put myself in this situation and I'm just going to let somebody with a cooler, clearer head talk me through this because it is a really emotional time. And it's funny because I was talking yesterday with some friends, and in criminal law, there's a saying, in criminal law, you see bad people at their best. Mm-hmm. They're putting on a good face. Mm-hmm. They're trying to behave well. In family law, you see really good people at their worst.
Right.
The worst and lowest part of their life. And it just kind of goes along with the territory. It's all drama, all day.
So talk about, go ahead.
What percentage about, just from what you're generally seeing, do you say bad versus good situations? Like,
but what is bad?
Like when they're when they've got each other, following each other around in the bushes, taking pictures to see,
You're talking about stalking and stuff like
cheating,
that.
No, not cheating.
Don't like trying to find material to use in the divorce, or like when it gets extra
Toxic.
acrimonious, when it gets extra nasty. Big word.
SATs.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do see that. I see that quite a bit. There are some people that can play nicely in the sandbox. There are some who can look at each other and go, hey, we just weren't meant to be together, and let's shake hands and go our separate ways. Or we've got children together. I don't particularly like you, but I know I'm going to be stuck with you, until they're 18 or until many years after. Sorry.
You're good. We're just going to have to deal with it. I'll try to figure it out.
I've said
in post.
that. I've said that on the show, honey. I told I told my wife we have an agreement. These kids didn't ask to be born.
Right.
So your ass ain't going. We can be friends. We can hate each other. We stand in this damn house together until they're situated, and we're not messing up them.
Right.
So I'm curious. Like, I'm married. I come to you. My wife wants to file for divorce. What's the process? What are you doing with me to counsel me?
So what I would do first is we would have a consultation, and we would sit down and talk about how long you've been married. We talk about the assets that you have, children you have, what situations led to the divorce. Is there any adultery? Is there any physical cruelty, any emotional cruelty, any desertion, any kind of fraud? Sometimes that does happen. What are the circumstances? So we can figure out how we're going to proceed. How well do you and your wife get along? I mean, have you just decided this really isn't working for me anymore? Or have you decided that we hate each other? And what was that movie in the 1980s, The War of the Roses?
Oh, so good.
Such a
Love
good movie.
that movie.
So
Love
good.
that movie.
So I'm curious though, is that do you take everything that your clients say at face value, or do you do some investigative work?
Absolutely not. I don't take what they say at face value. Right. I do look into everything, because as an attorney, you've got an ethical obligation when you file what's known as a pleading in court, some official document in court, that you are representing to the court that you are filing this on a good faith basis, right, and that to the best of your knowledge, the items in that document are true. So you really do, someone can come to me and say, he's abusive, okay, what text do you have?
So
do you have anything in writing? Do
you're
you have
waiting
any
for
recordings?
receipts.
What you say?
Yeah.
Say?
Pictures,
Receipts.
police reports, whatever.
Give me the receipts.
Friends that have witnessed things.
And then you can take all that and say, hey, here's my packet. This is what we're doing.
Correct.
Gotcha.
But you, like Pat was saying, you've already looked into all that to make sure that you're not handing in something. Oh, I got these receipts, and then somebody somehow fake text or whatever.
That does happen. It doesn't happen often because there's always two sides to every story,
right.
and I actually always say there's three sides to every story: his, hers,
So
and the
there's
truth.
There you
Right?
go. There you go.
How does the financial part work? Like, so once you get the divorce, right? How do you figure out who gets what?
That's called equitable distribution
Okay.
in Virginia. And so basically you have to go through all of the assets and all of the debts and figure out what is marital and what is not. Virginia is not a 50-50 state. We're equitable
Imagine
distribution. And so what the heck does that mean? Equitable distribution means we're going to look at everything, the whole pot, the good and the bad, and we're going to look at all the facts and circumstances in the marriage, the reasons for the dissolution of the marriage, tax consequences, education of the parties, etc. And then we're going to divide it out. It may not be 50-50, it might be 50-50.
If your credit card is just in your name, would that just stay with you, or like any debts that are just in the name of one party?
It can, but it depends on what you use that credit card for. So if you're married and you've got a credit card that's solely in your name and you take your family on a vacation on that credit card, that's marital. That's marital debt. While the card's in your name, you used it for marital purposes. So you really got to kind of parse all of that out.
Ew.
So I've heard
your shopping at Tiffany's is not going to be able to be equitably distributed.
I've heard that prenups are not worth the paper that they're printed on.
Absolutely not. That
Really?
no, absolutely not. That is not correct. Is what I meant to say. Absolutely, they are. The key to a prenup, though, is you have to get it done properly. It's really important to get an attorney to draw that up for you, to make sure that you're including all of the language and all of the considerations that you need to include in order for a judge to not look at it and go, this is void on the basis of public policy, or you really didn't disclose everything. That you have to disclose everything in order to have a prenup.
So you just watching, you get down the TikTok rabbit hole, right? And You know, I think I was watching one of the podcasts. I can't remember. It's
We watched
that
Andy.
that black dude. And he was like that black dude. Like, yeah,
that one.
I know,
Just that one.
That guy,
Oh yeah,
that
we know.
guy.
Yeah, we know.
He talks about a lot of relationships. I can't remember what his name is, but anyway,
The guy that died, Sean something.
Don't bring that
No,
guy
no.
up. That's not a relationship guy. That's
so I've heard that, you know, and a lot of discussions about prenups, and I think is it different by state to state?
Absolutely.
Okay, so because as the marriage extends further and lengthy, then the prenup becomes less viable. No.
No. And I always recommend to individuals who are looking to get married, sit down with a prenup. Sit down and divide. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, you're just planning for the dissolution of the marriage. Yeah, you kind of are. And that's okay because, let's face it, the majority of marriages don't survive.
Do you know what I say about prenups? I say, I love you enough to protect you from everything, including myself.
Okay, so
I think that's what it says.
all right.
I think that's very
let's
well
take-
said.
Let's take a poll. Let's take a poll here. So the women, raise your hand if you would be okay with signing a prenup. That is interesting.
I would insist on it.
I would definitely.
Men.
I ain't got shit. So,
I would
But
be cool
if you
with it.
did,
If I did it-
but if you did,
oh, I definitely would want to look into that. Definitely.
I would
But
definitely
you've
look into
got
it.
children,
Yes.
so you
wanna
want to
protect
be
my
able
children,
to protect
right,
your children.
right.
So if you're going into a second marriage and you've got a house
Oh,
that
yeah.
existed, you want to be
Yeah.
able to provide for your future wife in the event of a divorce, but you also want to be able to protect your kids too and make sure that
I
they're
don't want to actually have
covered.
nothing, but
I'm
that's
I'm curious. I'm curious, and any of the ladies can jump in. Would that answer be the same if the man was a millionaire and you worked at Wendy's?
Yeah, because
Yes.
because it can protect you. Like you can say, if we divorce in X number of years, I get X number of money. Right? It's my understanding. So even if like I have no career, I give up my career for my multimillionaire husband. Yeah, work that out, Huron. Let's get that going.
well, he's about to be.
Then if he divorces me, when he meets that younger Coco lookalike with her big butt on Instagram,
With a BBL.
then I still get whatever it is, like 5 million or 10 million. Like it's prorated out. I mean, it sounds really clinical, but I still think like love is love and marriage is a different thing, right? You can just be together and not get married.
Right.
I like about
Tanya.
Ask the question again.
If I was a millionaire,
Mm-hmm.
you worked at Wendy's, and I wanted you to sign a prenup, would you?
Hell yeah. First of all, I work at Wendy's, all right? So I'm not, you're here and I'm here. So even if I only go here, I'm still above where I was before. I'm not going to be the loser in this. I mean,
wouldn't
that's
it-
just, that's
Amen,
the bottom line. I'm not
sis.
going to be, even if I only get $2 million, I ain't have $2 million at Wendy's,
I got
right?
you. Whitney?
And that's an important point. Prenups are not about if we get divorced, I walk away with what I had and you walk away with
I
what
was
you
just
had.
about to-
It can be, we can agree that you're going to get 50% of my pension. We can agree that we're going to divide the house, 1/3 to my kids and then 2/3 to you. It's not just an all or nothing. It's not
And it
if we
makes
get-
provisions for kids, right? Like I think that's important too,
Yeah,
to say
absolutely.
like, okay, there's the spouse and then like
And
the
it,
kids.
and it also
then-
says that you invested something in me and I'm going to give you something for that. That's the bottom line. Like Janet Jackson, she was with her husband for what, 5 years and got all that money. You invested 5 years in me, I'm going to give you this. I mean, granted, she got a whole hell of a lot of money, but I'm
It's
just
all
saying,
relative.
Right.
5 years of my time, just like if you went on one of your jobs and someone decided, you were there for 2 weeks doing what you do and it looks amazing and they're like, yeah, we're just going to give you $200. I'm like, no, I spent 2 weeks here. You're going to give me my time is worth money, right? It's worth something. It doesn't have to be necessarily money, but it's worth something, right? So you've invested your time into this person, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I
Like
don't
I would,
know, y'all, every time we're on this podcast, man, I tell you, I learned something new because I didn't think that was going to be a thing because I really thought that women were or do have a problem with prenups.
Well, I think it has to do with age, though, because when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I would have thought differently because I'd been like, oh, I love this person. We shouldn't have to do a prenup. We're in love. But I'm a grown up now, and I've actually had real
I don't
life.
think so.
and, No, but I'm saying because, so I'll give you an example. My parents have land, right? They have 15 acres. And so, obviously, something happens. My brother and I
do they
get
have
it.
do they have a mule?
no, they don't have a mule. They don't. It's not quite that much. But like,
Half a
if
mule.
something happens to my parents, it's
dog.
going to go down to me and my brother, and me and my brother's kids. So if I get married to somebody, that ain't yours, because that I can generationally go back to my family. You don't get that, because that's Gordon property. You know what I mean?
Stephanie, you were
I would want a prenup for that.
going to say something.
I think that I need to put a pin in that because I have a whole bunch to say about that on a flip side of that.
ahead.
Because that's very one-sided.
Go ahead and do it.
I know.
But no, I want to go back to the first thing before I forget it. I think that for prenuptial agreements, I think you're so surprised, but maybe you're not looking at the motives.
I'm listening to you.
Okay, you're not looking.
I'm doing my audio. I'm doing my
Somebody might
audio
need to
stuff
retain
right
your
now.
services real quick.
Like, yeah, but you're not. You're also not considering that person's motives. You know what I mean? Women that this is just my personal opinion. Women that would not have a problem with signing a prenuptial agreement. Case in point, our motives are clean. They're clear. We came into this relationship with whatever it was that we had already had existing in our own lives that was working. Your addition to that is a bonus, but it's not necessary.
Right.
So you can keep what you have because I already have what I have. You know what I mean? So I think for a lot of people, the prenup goes wrong because their motives were wrong to begin with.
Facts.
So
I was going to say, this seems like something that's one of those things that like it's based upon conditionality, right? When we first started hearing about prenups and stuff, you know, like late 80s, 90s, whatever, it was, you only really heard was like, okay, if this person cheats on me, I get half their money, whatever it is. You know, we didn't really hear much about it. Now we're getting to situations where these people are breaking it down. After 2 years of marriage, you receive this amount. After 5 years of marriage, you receive this amount. After 10 years of marriage, you receive this amount. Based upon the conditioning of it, we're all getting a little bit more used to hearing about it and seeing it. So I think they're becoming probably more prevalent in what's going on in marriages and stuff.
Whitney, do you see? I'm sorry, Whitney. Do you think prenups have a negative connotation to them?
When I was younger, and I completely agree with you. When I was younger, absolutely. I would have viewed it as, you know, you're supposed to love me and trust me, and you're planning for the divorce. And I viewed it in a much different light. But like you said, as I get older and, you know, I have a child from a different marriage and my boyfriend has children from a different marriage, and it's like, wait a minute. We can do this to where everybody is taken care of. Right. Because if you're married and you go through a divorce, and if you're just talking about, I'm talking in generalities here, but there can be a situation to where your children are completely excluded from anything that you have financially. And I think most people, when you're going into a second marriage, third marriage, fourth marriage, 10th marriage, what have you, you, Liz Taylor.
Oh, you got to stop after.
I mean,
You are the problem.
After the third one,
Seventh is the
you strike
cutoff.
out.
I think seventh is the cutoff.
Come on.
Patricia, you
after
were
the
about to
seventh,
say?
you get a
Where's
free
J-Lo at?
set of steak knives.
There should be a whole card with a hole puncher on it.
You know,
Get a free
Get a free
toaster.
foot long Subway.
Hey, wait, do they have gifts for those? You know, like for 50th anniversary, they have the special gifts.
Right,
They
the
have
court
gifts?
clerk, the clerk of the court, when you go to fill out your new
I've
application.
got a question for Whitney after Patricia says what she was going to say.
Oh, it wasn't that important, but you know,
It's always important.
I also think when
You're saying
when you have
TJ.
two people who both have like millions of dollars, no one's gonna starve in this divorce. Everything's okay. I think it's more important when you have money that's maybe like, you know, more normal, where it could really, really have an effect. You know, like if you end up with 49 million versus 50 million, you're still going to be okay, right? But when you have assets that are maybe between 100,000 and 750,000, it's like a really big deal. But also with like families that get crazy. Like if my dad had been like a half a billionaire and some young woman that he married took care of him for 5 years and made him happy in the last 5 years of his life, it's like, give her some money. You know, like we said, she invested in him. She gave her his time. I think that should be okay.
Plus, when if you get involved with somebody and you guys get married, the other person succeeds because you had to do what you had to do for the other person to succeed.
To
And then when
support
when you guys get a divorce, you get left with nothing, right? So I think that also helps. The prenup also helps with
like
that situation.
putting someone through like a medical school or law school or whatever. You
All
know?
right, so
What's the smile for Pat?
I know, right? I was thinking the
Whitney,
same
you
thing.
said that you dove into the realm of marriage before. What's your opinions now?
My opinion on
Marriage.
prenups?
Marriage.
Oh, I'm still cautiously
She
optimistic.
has a long-term
I
boyfriend,
am.
Pat.
I am cautiously optimistic.
I'm just curious though, because people that have been divorced, that second time you're around, sometimes you're like,
What do you think, Patrick?
man, we've had this conversation, and
it's also people who've seen the divorce or seen the aftermath, of your friends' divorces or your parents' divorces. That probably plays a lot into
yeah, I mean, it would take a lot. I ain't gonna lie, it would take a lot.
She's like,
She's
yeah,
under
I
the
ain't
same-
doing that shit.
She's under the same.
Yeah.
I can't even spell marriage
Right.
without like having a gag
Gag
reflex.
reflex. I understand that. I understand that.
So would you dive? Would you dive back into it?
Oh yeah, we are going to get married. It's a matter of when. It's not if.
when the prenup's getting done, when the prenup's done, Pat, then they'll,
Yeah, we're both on that same page.
Yeah, that's good.
No, I'm always optimistic, and I do believe in marriage. I really do. I think it's an important institution. I think it solidifies a family, or even a blended family. I think it's an important thing, and it's always sad when a divorce happens. But sometimes when we're young, we pick people that are right for us at that point in time. And as we grow, as we change, some people grow together, and they're lucky enough to do that. Not everybody's that fortunate.
So let me ask you a question. So because when it's hard for some people to separate their professional life from their personal life, right? Firefighters take their work home. Police officers take their work home. You're a family attorney and a divorce attorney.
Yeah.
So when you come across that just vile, like, anger relationship, how does that affect you in your personal life?
It makes me, well, personally, yes, and I do take my work home with me. Well, in my current situation, it makes me grateful that I'm not with someone who has those types of tendencies, who doesn't have that aggressive personality, who is not that all or nothing kind of I've been wounded, I've been victimized kind of red flag that you see, when you're out there dating and stuff like that. So it makes me grateful for what I've got.
Does he recognize when you've had that? Like, does your personality change when you've had a case for the last month, and then you're like, God, I love you so much type deal? Does he recognize, like, yeah?
Does he know when to greet you at the door with
I know you just like had the man from hell type deal,
Oh yeah, he recognizes, and it's funny. I've actually picked up the phone. So my son, was from another marriage, and his father and I were very, what's the word? We were very agreeable. It's everything was fine. Everything was copacetic. We co-parented together beautifully. It just went. I mean, there was some hiccups, don't get me wrong, but overall, especially based on what I've seen now, it was fabulous. It was like storybook. And I've actually picked up the phone before and called him and said, I just want to say thank you.
That's awesome.
And he's like, are you on crack?
Right.
What are you doing?
Is she drinking margaritas again?
That makes a huge difference, though. I'm separated and have been for quite some time, and I have 3 kids, 2 of which are from previous situations, and then my third is with the person I'm separated from. And it was always the goal from the minute we decided to separate. It was always the goal that at the end of the day, we came together as friends before we ever dated, and we felt like that was the most important thing for us to leave as friends. But the most important thing, I think, for us was that we still remained a family unit, even though we were not together. So that nothing really changed for the kids, other than the living arrangement.
Right. Addresses,
nothing
yeah.
really changed for my kids. We, to this day, my son, my oldest, was just married a month and a half ago, and it was a family event. My daughter came home from New York. Again, it was like there were designated days that were family days, and we all did this, together. It's my 13-year-old is the one that, funny enough, is struggling with the separation, because now that she's getting older, she's like, you guys aren't together anymore. I get that. Like that part she's okay with, but it's the part that she's not okay with is that we are still friends and we still laugh and joke around with each other. And she's like, are you guys not together? Are you together? Like, it's just confusing. And at first I'm thinking to myself, we literally designed this to be less confusing for you, and yet we're doing it, and now it's turning out to be the most confusing thing for her.
It's what she sees from the outside.
I was going to say the
Yeah,
same
I
thing,
was just
sir.
saying that. But it's a society.
Because all her friends whose parents are not together, they
Right.
have tumultuous relationships. So
Yeah.
Their knives
what you're
are
doing, that's why it's confusing, is because you're supposed to be screaming, arguing, and fighting,
Right, and we
cussing
do
each
not.
other out. You're not supposed to be friends. You're not supposed to like each other. You're supposed to be talking about him. He's supposed to be
Right.
talking about you.
Yeah.
And how-
Because you don't do that, that's the confusing part.
Yeah.
Is
and how
does it
sad
work?
is that as a society
Right.
we've gotten to these
that's the
divorce
norm
rates.
that we've normalized.
And we've normalized
We've
that-
normalized toxicity. That's what the problem is, and that's why the marriages fail. That's why the families fail. It's because we normalize
Well-
toxicity because we have Facebook. We like all the drama.
We talked about this before you turn on any. I mean, I hate to say it. I was watching this thing the other night. Well, I'm not shocked that it's called Shiny Happy People, about the Duggar family and all the dirtbag secrets. We don't. That's for the religion show, Pat. We'll get that later. But the point being, you turn on. That's the learning channel. The learning channel.
And you learn
and
about
people
that.
are learning about toxic.
I got a
crap.
question. I got a question for Whitney. So you always hear about horror stories about child support, right? And how guys end up having to pay for child support, and then they miss a couple of child supports and go to jail, right? And then when they go to jail, they come out and they have to pay back child support, and they have to pay all that that they were, and if they don't, they go back to jail. Then they get their license taken away from them. It's hard for them to work and get back into where they have to pay, and they get so far behind. How does a guy get out of that situation?
That is really tough. That's an excellent question. And that's I would say it's very important, if you do have a child support obligation, that you don't get behind, that you stay on top of that, you make that a financial priority, because once you do get behind, it's like credit cards. Once you've got like a high interest
interest
credit
builds
card,
up.
everything, it just starts snowballing and snowballing and snowballing, and eventually you get to a point where you're not really going to be able to bail yourself out very easily.
But my thing is with DCSE is that, and I know this firsthand.
We need to know, what's
Calm down.
DCS?
You're throwing.
Department of Child Support Services.
Okay, calm down.
So with DCSE is that they, I think what a lot of people don't understand is that when they do get behind, that they have the capability, whether it's legal or not, to charge compounded interest. And sometimes this is yearly compounded interest, monthly, weekly. Like I know a person who was $6,000 in child support debt from another state. Got out of the military, moved to this state. Ooh. The child support enforcement from the other state said, "Hey, look, there's this bill. It's for $6,000. We're not charging interest, but it needs to be paid because it was in lieu of TANF, which is temporary assistance for needy families."
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you
So anyway, it was in lieu of that. It wasn't really a child support order. It was like in lieu of paying back social services for whatever emergency needs that the mother had. So anyway, it gets transferred to the state of Virginia. Payments immediately start, being garnished, those things. It is 25 years later, and that $6,000 debt is still standing in the other state. Not a dime of it has been paid, and hundreds of thousands of dollars have been paid towards this debt, and the state of Virginia has never paid cent one to that. Now, all the while, the state of Virginia is still collecting compounded interest on this debt that did not originate with them or originate here in the Commonwealth.
It's the Commonwealth,
Yeah.
baby. It's the Commonwealth.
But it's funny. I always say that the difference is that there is some differences with that designation, and it's kind of nasty. But it's great. After so many years, I'm gonna do this a lot during the show because I got a lot of friends who've had a lot of these situations. The military thing. I remember we literally had to come off deployment. A good friend of mine, we had to get in the car and go hunt a broad down because she had been lying about the paternity of the child. We spent 2 days hunting her down throughout the state of Carolina until we found her and made her go get a blood test because the military was garnishing his money.
Right.
And so he had to fight to get his money back.
Yeah.
So I got a bunch of stats, and I'm going to ask you a question. So 63% of all custodial mother versus 38.6 of fathers are owed money. Okay, 25% of all children are owed child support. I didn't know kids are owed child
Well, that's
support.
what it's for.
That's what it's for, the child.
The obligation, the right belongs to the child, not the parent.
They're just the collector of the money until
Yeah.
the child is, if they're under 18.
Because that's an interesting
All right,
question.
we're gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
for
So
a
what if
second.
the mother just takes the money and buys?
Yeah,
other
are they
stuff,
supposed to
you
be
know?
saving that, or can they be like getting their nails done?
No.
The purpose of child support is to pay the child's share of the living
Living
expenses,
expenses.
to pay their
Theoretically,
share
sure.
of the electric bill, the water bill, the rent.
Food.
Yeah,
But
that sort of-
activities.
Yeah.
in reality, because I can talk from my brother's experience, is that a lot of that child support wasn't going to that child. It was the upliving of the mother.
Well,
That
we're
should
not
be
ta- we're
alimony.
not
That should be
talking about-
alimony, right?
But we're
Shouldn't
not
it?
talking about the morality of the mother and her dispersing of the money. What it's
set up
for,
for.
and what it is set up for is to take care of that child.
That's what I'm saying, but there's no way to really monitor that.
There's
That's my
not.
question. Okay.
There's not.
Average child support per year is $5,150 or $430 per child.
Is that per week?
Per year?
or more?
Per year? $5,000 per year?
Per
Per
month.
month.
Okay, I
Oh,
was
per
about to
month.
say, yeah, about to say. That's-
So that seems low, though.
That does sound low.
It does very
Probably
low.
for our
think
area,
about
but
it.
if it's for the country,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's
You're
that's an average.
Right, you're
Because
talking
if-
about Northern Virginia
Yeah.
compared to.
Yeah, it depends on where you live at, and also depends on what county you live in the state of Virginia. Because a lower income county, I know people that were getting $50 a month in the state of Virginia.
Well, it's like by a
because of-
ruling scale, right? It's like how much you make and
Yeah.
how much the other person makes.
And that's a good question.
Oh, going to research. I love it.
Yeah, I did prepare some things today, so we could kind of talk about it. The way child support is set up, it's basically it's an algebraic formula.
Yep.
It's called the Child Support Guidelines,
So we do use algebra in real life.
and we
Yeah,
do.
but
only
we
lawyers,
do.
only
Sadly. But I brought some examples so you could actually see. You know, literally, you are plugging in gross incomes.
Right.
So let's say you're plugging in your gross income, you're plugging in your gross income. You are getting a credit for any work-related child care that you pay. So if you're paying the daycare expenses, you're going to get that credit. If you're paying for the health insurance for the child's portion,
right.
you're going to get that credit. And in the law, it actually is written out in a table. So you can see. So if the two parties together, if their
Oh my
gross
God.
incomes, multi-page,
Jesus
yeah.
Christ.
So if their gross incomes, let's go to a bigger one, total $22,500 a month.
Right. God dang.
It should cost, according to the code, $1,694 to support one child per month.
Per month.
3 children, $2,926,
Huh?
and it goes up to 6 children.
That's if you make $22,000 a month.
Gross.
Gross.
The two of
Combined.
you combined. So then what it does is it takes that 1,694 and let's say you make 40% of the gross income, you make 60%, and it proportions that 1,694 after the credits and gives you 60% of that and gives you 40% of that.
What
that
if
makes
what if the mother was a homemaker?
That's where it gets a little bit tricky. And I've got a very controversial position on allowing a stay-at-home parent. And I'll get into that in a minute. But you do factor in the zero. There's a 0% income at that moment for gross income. So the minimum child support that's owed, so let's say that you have the children, let's say that you work and you don't work and you're the full-time caregiver, your minimum child support is going to be $68 a month,
Oh, wow.
which is not enough to support your children. It's not. But if you've got a situation where you've had a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, gender open here, you're going to end up carrying the lion's share of that child support. You just are. You created that situation.
Is there also, okay, let's get into it. So if there is a stay-at-home male or female, whatever.
Parent.
Right?
Use the word parent.
Right? Parent.
Gender
There's-
fluidity here,
Yeah,
gender
exactly. So
Parent's
if there's a stay-at-home parent and they're not bringing in any income, is there also spousal support on top of that child support?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you've been married, not if you just have children outside of marriage. But
That's alimony, right?
correct. Yeah, spousal support and alimony are interchangeable terms.
Is that why they got rid of the? Well, I don't know. I've heard they've gotten rid of that Commonwealth law, the common law marriage thing, statute, stuff like that. You know,
We've never had common law marriage in Virginia.
really.
Only certain states do, and I believe, don't quote me on this, but it's less than 10.
Okay.
DC has it, but you have to actually file for it or show that you've been like filing taxes together. The
Together.
state can't come in and say,
Oh, okay.
"Oh, Hiran and I lived together for
Right.
7 years. Now we're married."
Well, it's just
we
like-
have to act like a married couple in
Right.
financial matters and things like that.
That's good to know because I guess a
Because
lot of
I
people
asked
bullshit.
about that.
I thought Virginia changed that if you were together 7 or 10 years. They didn't?
No more common law marriage.
Lies.
no common law
all
marriage.
lies.
So I know that.
Wait, I want to
Say
hear
it
the
again, say it again, say it
controversy.
Lies. All lies.
A lot of y'all been lying.
I want to hear Whitney's controversial stance on the homemaker situation or the stay-at-home parent.
Like I said, several folks would disagree with me, particularly those that feel that having a stay-at-home parent is always in the child's best interest. And so understand this is just simply my opinion. My opinion is that never, ever allow the other parent to be unemployed and stay at home. If you want to make that arrangement until the children get in school, that's cool. Do that. But have a very clear understanding that once these kids get in school, you're returning to the workforce.
Right.
You're not going to be working a part-time job and doing retail at minimum wage and just enjoying your life